This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Morning, 9 o'clock, your call. Gay marriage, for better or for worse? Later today, MPs will vote on proposals to allow people of the same sex to tie the knot in England and Wales. If the law is passed, will it be a great day for Britain or a bad day for marriage? The Reverend Sharon Ferguson is from the lesbian and Christian gay movement.
Love is the foundation of the purpose of marriage, and that doesn't matter whether that love is between a man and a woman, or between two men, or between two women.
Newspaper columnist Andrew Pearce is gay. He's against the idea.
Politicians are going to put church and state on this terrible collision course. Civil partnerships, to my mind, are the same as marriage. We're just arguing about a word.
Your call, what do you think? Gay marriage, for better or worse? You can text 85058. Call us 0500 909 693. You can find me on Twitter and you can... Here we go then. Gay marriage, for better or for worse? We've got Mike Judge, a spokesman for the Coalition for Marriage. Hello, Mike.
Good morning.
Hi, and Ben Summerskill, Chief Executive of Stonewall. Hello, Ben.
Hi, Nicky.
Hi. Rowan's in London. Steve's in Exeter. Steve, good morning.
Morning.
And Rowan, good morning to you. Rowan, you go first.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Yeah, I just wanted to talk very briefly about the difference between civil partnership and marriage. We've heard that civil partnership gives people the same rights, and I want to explain why, as a gay person, marriage is so much more important to me than civil partnership. It's because of equality. Mm-hmm. It's because when you grow up and you feel alone and different to everybody else, and you harbour this terrible secret, what goes through your mind is that I won't be able to get married, like my parents, like my teachers, like the society that I live in, the fabric of that society being marriage. You don't want to be on an island on yourself called civil partnership. You want to feel that you are the same as everyone else, and that it's not so different and it's not so terrible being gay. And that's why it's not just a word, as one of your previous guests said. It's a meaning, and it's a feeling of emotional acceptance.
Steve, do you not accept that?
No, I don't. Well, why should we have equality? I don't understand. Everything's not equal in society. You've got, that I don't quite understand. Where does equality come from? Why should we have equality? I don't. Where does that come from? Whose idea is equality? The society isn't the same. We don't all have the same position in society. There's rich people, there's poor people. There's lots of different things. Who's pushing equality, and whose idea is that?
Well, we believe in justice, don't we? We believe in of course.
Justice isn't equality.
But of course there's rich people and poor people, but we strive to have a society where everybody's got the same opportunity.
No, we don't.
Yeah,
no, we don't.
Of course.
Why would we strive for that? Some people are very happy.
All right. Okay.
Rich all their
in the
lives.
eyes of the law, equality in the eye. Hang on a second, Steve.
It sounds like sort of people who were advocating segregation of black people in the States. I mean, inequality is absurd.
What's your objection?
It's like you believe in the subjugation of a portion of the population because they don't deserve the same rights as everyone else. I don't understand how you're morally justifying that.
The thing is, you started off with civil partnerships, and it was like, no, we're not going to ask for anything more than that. I mean, the thing is, it's not even how is a natural thing two people of the same sex being together? And now we're asking the church when we don't want the church. We're not interested in the church. We're a secular society apparently now. All of a sudden, no, we want the church because all of a sudden, as same-sex people, we want that thing that you've got over there, marriage. We need that.
What are your fears?
Change it.
What are your fears?
What we want.
What are your fears? Where do you think this will lead? What are your fears about this? How will this be bad for society?
Well, how do you explain to your children when you've explained that same-sex relationships is wrong? Then when society says, but when your children say, look, but they get married, or and you're like, hang on, how does this undermines your whole?
What happens if you say to one of your children? Well, if you say to your children, same-sex relationships are wrong. What if one of your children's gay, Steve?
Well, they're not. And also, if they were, then you would explain to them that being gay is wrong. So,
right, I see.
You know, you would still love them. You would still love them just the same.
Rowan, do you want to come back and then we'll bring our guest?
I just want to ask Steve. I'd just like to ask you a question. Actually, two questions. You used the word natural, and that you explained to your children that being gay is wrong. Are you aware of the fact that it's universally accepted scientifically that in the animal species, there are amongst dogs, zebras, cats, lions, in fact, amongst so many mammal species, homosexuality is a frequent occurrence between different species of non-human beings. So I just want to, where you have animals of the same gender. But I also want to ask you, just what does it do to your life? What is the impact of your life of a gay person marrying someone that they love? Just tell me how your life is made more difficult by that. That's all I'd like to know.
Well, my life isn't really of importance to. It's not a case of whether it makes my life any different or not. It's where we're going down the road. Next thing is we're going to have people marrying animals.
Oh, for goodness sake. Ben Summerskill, Mike Judge, is that an embarrassment to you, a view like that?
I don't think that those views are at all the majority views of people who have the reservations about this. And they're certainly not my views. They're not the reasons I have reservations about this. I mean, the reasons I don't think the government should be pressing ahead is it's not really asked the public. It's doing this without properly putting it before the public. If the government strongly believed in this, they ought to have put it in their manifesto. And indeed, all sorts of polls will give you all sorts of answers. But when I talk to people are fairly evenly split on this. And so for those democratic reasons, I don't think it's a good idea to go ahead. But some of the reasons that your caller's just given certainly are not my reasons.
Ben Summerskill.
I must just say, Nicky, in some sense, I wish you'd let Steve go on talking all day.
Well, you can talk to him now if you like. He's still there.
Public opinion swinging towards us. And the other thing I should say is it's really, really nice to hear someone called Rowan sticking up for gay people. It's a very long time since someone called Rowan has troubled to do so in such articulate terms. But the reality is the vast part of the general public support this. They precisely don't see that it makes any difference whatsoever that if you suddenly discover, you like pear drops, that doesn't somehow reduce someone else's enjoyment of pear drops. And I think what we're going to see in the House of Commons today is an opportunity for the House of Commons, for the first time in a while, to actually indicate that it has some understanding of what the wider British public are thinking. And the wider British public, on the whole, recognise that there are now tens of thousands of children growing up with two mummies or two daddies. Now, whether they approve of their parents or not, those children have the right to grow up in the same family structure with the same name as anyone else's.
Is this the right issue at the right time, or the right issue at the wrong time? Some people argue, there's so much else that is, besetting our country at the moment.
Well, on the basis we've got the economy to worry about as well, I've got an excuse for not cleaning the fridge for the next 6 months because we can only worry about what's really, really important. And that's the weakness of the argument we've heard. And Mike, from the Christian Institute, a rather oddly named organisation, because so often people don't sound very Christian, Mike got married last year. Mike thought that this was something that would help transform his life and the life of his lovely wife, but somehow thinks other people are born in such a way that doesn't entitle them to benefit from that very, very happy state of affairs. And that's just unfair. And the vast majority of people under 40 agree with that.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch you there.
Life is unfair.
Well, on that basis, of course, we'd still have women in the kitchen and homosexuals in prison, like we did 50 years ago. And the reality is, the institution of marriage has changed as well. We've heard in the last few months from people such as Mike, these slightly kind of dramatic suggestions that somehow the Church of England would collapse and it would be end of 500 years of an established church. I mean, it's all stuff out of Monty Python because the institution of marriage is being changed. Well, you know, only 20 years ago, rape within marriage finally became unlawful. It's only 15 years ago that people were able to start getting married in stately homes and, you know, in amusement parks. The nature of marriage has constantly changed.
Mike Judge,
to adapt itself to the modern world.
Mike Judge, it's a historic day, isn't it?
It is a historic day because this isn't just an evolution of marriage. This is a revolution of marriage. Yes, marriage law has changed from time to time on things like where people can have a wedding, but no change in law has ever changed the essential nature of marriage as between a man and a woman. So this isn't an evolution, this is a revolution. It will be a historic day. I think a lot of observers expect the bill to pass this first hurdle. The real dramatic thing will be how many Conservatives vote against the government, and then, of course, things move on in Parliament, and it'll go before the House of Lords, where of course the House of Lords will have an opportunity to have their say. So yes, today is a historic day, but you know there'll be more historic days in the weeks and months ahead.
Let's hear from a couple of more callers, actually. I know Rowan and Steve are probably still there, but Graham's in Cheltenham and Olwyn's in Mansfield. Hello, Olwyn.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, all yours.
I've rung in to question the fact that statements keep coming out saying that most people agree that this bill should go through Parliament. And I question who they're asking, because I find that, a lot of people, whilst extremely understanding of homosexuality and lesbianism and couples living together and even bringing up children together, this is a step too far to say that they can be married. Your previous caller said the nature of marriage is changing. It is changing, but it is changing for the worse. In my experience, I've brought up, along with my husband, 5 children. We've worked as house parents in a children's home, and we have a social worker in the family. My experience of life is that children, the best way to bring children and rear them up is in a relationship where there is a father and a mother, and where they are married and they have a contract together. They are married. Well, I just find that this bill going through Parliament is underestimating the importance of something that has been established for years and years and years. And I think the government is wrong to hurriedly pass this bill through.
More and more, Olwyn, one point is that more and more children have parents of the same sex. So is it not better that those children are brought up within a marriage?
No, I don't think so. I think that the marriage contract has got to be, just for the simple, plain sense of a man and a woman in contract together, are married, and I believe that that this is the important thing.
All right, let me bring Graham in, if I may. Graham, go on.
I find it disturbing that we use the word contract in marriage in the same sentence.
Maybe I've used the wrong word.
If marriage is anything, and I think we ought to I think it's time next for us all to redefine marriage. If marriage is anything, marriage is not a document, it's not a religious, it's not a civil ceremony. Marriage is a state in a relationship between 2 people, and I mean 2 people.
No, it's a commitment.
Why do you want to go and get a piece of paper to say that you're married then? Or you want to go into a church?
And it is a contract.
Just tell each other.
No, marriage is a state and relationship. I know people that have gone through the civil ceremony, and I know people that have gone through the religious ceremony. And in my mind, the way
is not marriage.
Can I come in here? Sorry.
Well, let Graham finish, and then you can come in.
And in my mind, some of them are no more, in my mind, married They're a banana. It's ridiculous when you see the state of the relationship. It's a mockery to call it a marriage. So let's go back to the basics. If marriage is anything, it's not a traditional ceremony. It's the state in a relationship between two people. It is as simple as that.
Well, why does the ceremony matter so much? Rowan, why does the ceremony matter so much? You wanted to come in, I think, Rowan, did you?
Yeah, the ceremony matters because it implies acceptance, and because it actually, and this is what I think scares a lot of people, even though they won't admit it, it implies the normalization of being gay. And,
well, that's true, yeah. Yeah.
And, Owen, you just spoke about, in your experience, the right way, the best way to bring up a child is between a man and a woman. What's your experience of same-sex couples bringing up children?
Not good.
I strongly suspect it's almost non-existent.
Hang on, sorry, Ben. I do apologise. That was a question to Olwyn from Rowan, so let's let Olwyn answer it now.
I think there'll be lots of situations where two women have brought up a child. There could be the mother, the mother-in-law, situations like that. But I'm sorry, where you've got two people of the same sex saying that they are a married couple to a child that they're bringing up, we are confusing a generation of children about what marriage is about. And I'm sorry, but my experience, even from the years that we spent in children's homes, bringing up children, they want a mom and a dad. They do not want... I salute those who are doing the job, the women and the men, but I don't agree with it. And
Owen, may I ask how old you are?
I'm 76.
So you're bringing... Right, Ben Summerskill, Olwyn there, and many will agree with her, bringing 76 years of wisdom to the table, and she's brought up a lot of children. Do you respect her view, Ben?
Completely. I mean, I completely understand that there are people who have difficulty, acknowledging the way in which the world is changing. But at the end of the day, the interesting thing about what Olwen and Steve and Mike are saying is they're all talking all the time, and we hear them on other subjects, people like this, they're all talking all the time about what other people should be doing with their lives. And, my gentle advice to Olwen and Steve and Mike would be simply, if you don't approve of same-sex marriage, and you're perfectly entitled not to approve of it, then just don't get married to someone of the same sex.
Please don't put us in boxes. I do object to this, where you disagree with one aspect of my thinking, but then you choose to put me into a box. I won't have that.
I put you into a box of someone who thinks it's right to tell other people what to do.
I know people who are in a same-sex relationship. I know people who are homosexuals, and I'm not in any way condemning them. I can understand to a degree where they're coming from, but I'm just saying, don't let's tamper about with marriage. It is the thing that is important to our children, the generation of children that we're bringing up, and it's something that's been established in communities throughout the world through the centuries and through the church, and we are supposed to be a Christian country.
But now it's changing. Now it's changing.
I know it's changing, but if we do this and we do it hurriedly,
but Olwen,
you're
saying we mustn't tamper with marriage, and that will prevent a small number of children growing up in families with married parents. At the same time, there are 3 million children in this country growing up in single-parent families. Don't you think people such as you have failed if you're actually seeking to impose your worldview on others? You say it's good for these children to grow up in two-parent families. They're not. And what you've got is a small number of lesbian and gay people who are saying we want our children to grow up in these families. It just seems odd that you can't acknowledge and respect them enough to say, yes, I think that might be quite a good thing.
I do respect them and I do love them, but I just believe that we're imposing on another generation of children things that they don't deserve. We should be teaching them a different standard.
Well, listen. I'm going to move it on. Olwen, thank you so much for your call. More to come. Thank you to Graham. Thank you to Steve and Rowan. Thank you. You gave us a very powerful start to the programme, Rowan.
Your call.
Ben Summerskill, Chief Executive of Stonewall, still with us. Mike Judge with us for a few more moments from the Coalition for Marriage. More from Ben and Mike in a second. Jan's in Bedfordshire. Hello, Jan.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to your call.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I am adamantly against gay marriage. Has anybody actually looked at the wording of the marriage ceremony? Are we now going to throw that out and start again and have another one for gays and lesbians? Because it says, in the eyes of God, marriage is a holy institution between a man and a woman. Are we now going to throw that out and have a very special ceremony for gays and lesbians? We're told that a vicar or a priest, whatever, can refuse to marry them, as our vicar will do, because he won't even marry people who have committed adultery, and he's not an old fogey. He's in his early 30s and has a ponytail down to the middle of his back. He's certainly not an old traditionalist.
So he won't marry people who are divorced?
He will marry people if they're divorced, except if their divorce has been caused because they have committed adultery. So that poor man is going to be forced to stand up there and say things that we have all discussed it as a group that he finds abhorrent.
What about Christian forgiveness? Is that not... No?
But he has got to stand there and say things that he finds abhorrent. He's already been...
Jan, he categorically not. I mean, I think there are two issues here, and they are important. One is there's a really important issue of religious freedom, that there are denominations, they may not be yours, but there are denominations such as the Quakers who, as a matter of prayer, have tens of thousands of them have consulted God about what they think they should do in their church, and they wish to carry out same-sex marriages. The Reformed Jews are the same. So it's an incredibly important matter of religious freedom that those denominations in a free country should be permitted to do that. But similarly, what this legislation makes crystal clear, and I've read it from cover to cover, I don't know if you have, but what this legislation makes...
You are the expert on this.
What this legislation makes crystal clear is that no one, such as your priest, will be obliged to carry out a service that they do not wish to. And in fact, the law in that area has existed for almost a decade. If it were possible to sue a priest for not carrying out the sort of ceremony you wish, then of course lots of people would already have sued priests for declining, as you've pointed out, declining to celebrate second weddings.
Imams are on safe territory here, are they, Ben?
Well, let's emphasise those imams who don't wish to celebrate same-sex marriages. There are some Muslims who think that gay people should be able to get married.
It's not quite as clear as that, because sexual orientation is a protected ground under European human rights law, whereas your divorce status isn't. So that's why there hasn't been a legal problem for ministers who don't wish to remarry divorcees.
And
the
here we go
with this is
the European Court of Human Rights. You wait until the first gay couple take it to the Court of Human Rights, European Court of Human Rights. That law will be turned over. I can guarantee it.
Actually, if Jan's going to raise that issue, it's very important to actually correct it. First, European case law is crystal clear that no state can be forced to do things around the family that they don't want to. Second, there was a gay case that was taken against the government of Spain on precisely these grounds, and the European Court threw it out.
Steve, I believe you're against it. Hello, Steve.
Oh, good morning.
Let me ask a question that's been asked of one of my people on Twitter, Simon Price, who's a journalist. He says the gay marriage debate rattles on Nicky Campbell's show. Still no opponent has answered the simple question. What's it to you? So, Steve, answer that question. What's it to you?
Well, my fundamental belief about marriage is basically summed up by Alwyn, that children are the central issue here. And in my experience and my personal belief is that children benefit from an inclusive relationship with males and females, mothers and fathers. And to have two of the same, two fathers or two mothers, is not good for the child.
What about if it's a situation of one mother?
And what is best for the child is that.
But there are many situations where it's a single parent situation.
I agree with you totally, and I have been a single parent myself. But as a default position what is best for the child. When I fought for custody of my son, I was told constantly, over and over again, like a mantra, a single father bad, single father bad. Oh, two fathers good now. Is that right?
But there are appalling situations with all configurations.
But we are designing it as a default position as to what is best for the child, and I disagree. There's a fundamental change now between what is best for a child and what's best for adults. And the law is being changed to suit adults, not children.
Let's see John in Liverpool, not far from Formby. John, quick word.
Basically, I just think the guy who said "what's it to you's got it spot on. It's just bigotry. What does it matter who marries who? You know, we've got bigger problems in the world than who marries who. And as for gay marriage, there's incidents all throughout the course of history of where same-sex marriage is allowed. 2 Roman emperors married men. That was illegal, Barlas and Nero. And I just don't see how it affects other people. It's just stunning, the ignorance in this country at the moment.
Steve's worried about the children. Steve's worried about the children.
Well, that's, you know, if anyone watched The Simpsons in the 90s, there was that ridiculous outburst of the Reverend's wife, who will think of the children? You know, the children benefit from a stable relationship. You know, let's face it, if we look at, at what's known as acceptable marriage now between man and a woman, that hasn't exactly got a sterling record in providing for children, has it? It's got its ups and its downs. So why would it be any different for same-sex relationships?
Thank you all. Jan, what do you think of David Cameron pushing this through, as you might see it?
I think the man is in for a heck of a lot of trouble. He really is, because
now we're on the afterlife.
Both. Yeah, he'll have chance to repent if he sits and thinks about it.
Hallelujah. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Ben?
Yes?
I said thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Praise be.
This is it history today? Is this the historic day, yeah?
I think it's, if we win, and we never take anything for granted, particularly on a free vote where people will be swayed by the strength of the arguments. But, I mean, if we win, this will be the final piece in the legislative jigsaw of equality.
Mike Judge says not. He says it's the Lords will save the day for him.
Well, let's see what the majority is. I think if there is a large majority, more than, say, 70 or 80, the normal majority for government business, while the Lords will do its job, its perfectly proper job of scrutiny, it will be very, very difficult for the House of Lords to actually resist a bill in total. And I think you'll find they will look carefully at the risks of saying, well, we're going to completely ignore a very significant vote in the House of Commons. But the vote is not over until it's over.
All right, we're running slightly late. I do apologise. Mike Judge, a very quick final comment, if you would. We're going to move on with more guests and more callers in the next half hour. Mike Judge.
Yes, I think that one of the key questions is how does this affect anybody else? And one of the things that I've been alarmed at listening to the programme is the way in which opponents have been called ignorant and bigoted. And I think a great concern for people is that if they continue to voice opposition, if the law is changed, particularly if they work...
It's how you voice opposition. We had a caller earlier on saying next they'll be legalising marriage with animals.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that, Nicky. I'm talking about people who talk about these things in a sensible way, in a moderate way.
Right.
If they do so, and they're in a position like a teacher, how will a local authority treat them? Those are the kind of ways in which this will affect the whole of society. So not just a little change, quite a big change.
Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you. Spokesman for the Coalition for Marriage, 9:35. Here's Simon. Sorry we're late.
Snow, sleet, rain, wind, sunshine.
Yes, the gay marriage debate, for better or for worse. Dr. Austin Ivory, Director of Catholic Voices. Hello.
Hi, Nicky.
Hi there. And Peter Tatchell, a human rights campaigner. Hello, Peter.
Greetings.
Austin, and we've got Claire in Bury St Edmunds and Joe in Manchester. Good morning, good morning, good morning. And Richard in Huddersfield. Austin, okay, in logical terms.
Yeah.
We've had some bigotry this morning. I'm sure even you would agree if you'd heard it. Explain the rational argument against this.
Yeah, I did hear it, and I was appalled by some of the remarks. My opposition, most people's opposition to same-sex marriage, does not rest on any view of gay people as in any way wrong or disrespecting the love between gay people. It is about the fact that marriage is an institution with certain characteristics which uphold goods, and at the heart of it is the heterosexual conjugal union union of a man and a woman, which gives the possibility of giving rise to children who are then brought up by their birth parents, and everything else about marriage, and of course marriage is about much more than children, the commitment and the sexual fidelity and so on, is all designed to support that environment. So unique is that institution, so beneficial is it to society, that it has traditionally been singled out and distinguished from all other relationships, including relationships where children are involved. And the state and the church and society has said this is special, we call it marriage, and we send a signal to society that it is special and that it is unique. Right. What the government is proposing to do is to reduce marriage to a mere domestic partnership between any two people in which those characteristics are just not important.
What will the detriment be to society?
Well, it's very straightforward. The law teaches culture. So what's going to happen is that marriage will be downgraded in the eyes of society. It will become harder for people to live by its norms because they will have more difficulty in seeing why it's important. And as we've seen in other countries which have introduced same-sex marriage, fewer people will marry, more people will divorce, and marriage will just become, people will be confused about what marriage is.
Richard, in Huddersfield, do you want to come back on any of that?
Well, I think he's absolutely right about what he says marriage is, but there's absolutely no reason at all why the same conditions can't apply between two people of the same gender.
Well, the answer is very simple, because two people of the same gender are incapable of being natural parents to a child, and therefore are providing the environment in which those children are brought up by their biological parents. So, that's the fundamental key difference between marriage and all other relationships.
Well, you just said that the ability to have natural children within the relationship wasn't the be-all and end-all of the situation, so...
I'm sorry, say that again?
Well, you just said that the ability for the two people involved to have children wasn't the be-all and end-all of the marriage.
No, I said it wasn't the only thing that marriage upholds. It's not the only good in marriage. But actually everything else about marriage, the sexual fidelity, the commitment and so on, supports that biological union, which is open to the possibility of children. Of course, many people don't have children. But the fact is a man plus a woman is what gives rise to children. That's why the law distinguishes it, protects it, promotes it, why the state is involved in it, and why it's special, and why, if you redefine it, its importance will be reduced in the eyes of society, which will be bad for society and bad for children.
What about the argument that it will be bad for children if they are if their parents are gay and their parents are not married? Would it not be better for those children if their parents were married and they were in a marriage situation?
Well, except that you can call it marriage, but it isn't marriage, because actually a same-sex couple cannot be biological parents to that child.
You will never recognise it.
No, because I recognise lots of people bringing up children in fantastic ways with great love and care. Single parents. I was brought up by divorced parents. Nikki, you were brought up by foster parents.
Adopted parents.
I'm sorry, adopted parents. So there are lots of different ways of bringing up children with great love and care. But only marriage provides the biological link between parents and children, which produces terrific outcomes. It produces the structure which a child needs. That's what makes it different. It's not the love and care. Lots of people provide love and care to children, but marriage provides that unique structure which a child needs.
Peter Tatchell.
To me, the fundamental issue here is that the opponents of same-sex marriage are supporting discrimination. They're saying that gay people's love is unworthy, that it doesn't deserve the same legal recognition as heterosexual couples. Equally, of course, the government is maintaining the ban on heterosexual civil partnerships. And just as much as I oppose inequality for gay people, I also oppose inequality for straight people. So I'd like to see both civil marriages and civil partnerships opened up to heterosexuals and to homosexuals, so there's true equality. And I think anybody who believes in democracy has got to accept the principle that whatever we may personally think about homosexuality or marriage, in a democratic society, everyone should be equal before the law.
The problem, Peter, with your definition of equality is that it's about the eradication of difference. The law discriminates justly and correctly between situations which are different. And it says marriage is different. That's why it is only open to certain people who can meet its conditions. For example, if you're already married, you can't marry somebody else. You can't marry more than one person. There are various conditions that apply to marriage.
So can I correct you, Austin? The ban on same-sex marriage in Britain was only introduced in 1971. There is nothing in the 1949 Marriage Act which prohibits marriage between two people of the same sex.
Well, that may be true. That may be true.
The ban was only introduced just over 30 years ago.
Well, that's a technicality. You're saying that, in fact, gender isn't defined in the 1949 Marriage Act, but of course it's assumed, and you know that. It's assumed in all international law that when marriage is referred to, it is between a man and a woman. There is no human right to same-sex marriage. No international charter declares it. The European Court of Human Rights says no one has the right to a same-sex marriage. There is no human right. Therefore,
you're wrong there.
There is no discrimination.
The Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that everyone has a right to marry and found a family.
But the assumption...
Let me stop interrupting. It doesn't say this only applies to heterosexual people. That may have been the assumption in years past, but we are now in an era of greater enlightenment and compassion where we try to overcome discrimination, not just against gay people, but against anybody who's suffered exclusion. And I think it's really wrong that you want to maintain the law of discrimination because of your personal views. No. You're entitled to your personal point of
Peter,
views. I will defend your right to hold your personal views, but you don't have a right to impose your personal views on the rest of society using the law of the land.
Peter, I'm not discriminating against anybody. I'm upholding a good, which is what the law does, which is the good of marriage, which is particular and unique to heterosexual people because they alone are capable of having a biological union giving rise to children.
Well, if you say the law bans gay couples from getting married, you are discriminating. You can dress it up any way you wish.
It doesn't ban technically, it doesn't ban gay people from marrying. It bans anybody from marrying somebody of the same sex.
What would your situation? What would your position be if we have this research, which they think may come down the line in 10, 20 years, where two women can have a biological child? I don't know if you saw the scientific research recently. Well, they've done it in mice.
Well,
now,
at the moment,
does that not blow your argument?
You asked me something. I haven't considered that. But let me tell you what. But let me tell you what can happen now is you can have, of course, children through surrogacy, which is what a lot of same-sex couples do. But let's not pretend that these give the same or as good results for children. Children, as your previous caller, Alwyn, said very beautifully, need and want a mother and a father. Sometimes they don't get it, but that's what they need, that's what they want, and that's what the law should promote. Can I ask Peter, because he's asked me a question.
Most gay people do not have children, so therefore your argument about children is irrelevant.
Well, Ben Summersgill, of course, was basing his argument on the fact that many same-sex couples have children.
Some do and some don't.
Of course many straight couples don't have children, but the law doesn't interfere with the question of whether they actually have children or not. It says man plus woman is what can give rise to, usually does give rise to, children. It doesn't oblige people to do it, but the characteristics, the capability of a biological union is there with a man and a woman.
Thank you.
Can I ask Peter
I have to do the travel news, but you can stick around, you can do that, because we're late with the travel news. It's 9:52, and there's some important stuff going on. Michelle?
Your call.
Austin, I'll ask you a question in a second. Let's hear a caller or two. Claire in Bury St Edmunds. Hello, Claire. What's your point?
My point is that the last chap from the Catholic Church was suggesting that marriage is the only way that children can be brought up in a good way. I find that quite odd because, as far as I understand it, statistically at the moment, almost 50% of those people who are saying "till death us do part" are getting divorced. And how does that then balance out his argument? My opinion is if someone wants to get married, let them get married, whether they are gay or straight, because I have the common sense to know that whether they are married or not, they will continue their lives as they want to. Fortunately, our society is tolerant enough now, it wasn't several years ago, but tolerant enough now so that people can live their lives in the way that they want to. So whether they're married or not, gay people will still live together and straight people will still live together and go about their lives. So why should it bother me or anybody else whether they are married or not? If they want to get married, let them.
Joe in Manchester.
Hi, Nikki. I think
Joe.
The main problem here is an issue of values. And I wasn't quite sure where the other chap was from, but I totally agree with everything he said. He's basically taking the words out of my mouth. It's like a club. I'm sorry to use that analogy. It's not the best. You have rules and you have regulations. Marriage is like that club. This is what it is. If you are not if you don't fit the criteria, then you don't belong there. I have nothing against gay and lesbian people wanting to get married or, wanting to join themselves together in civil partnerships. But marriage is distinct. That's why it's called marriage. It's like taking the rules of cricket.
Why are so many people getting divorced?
That is a different issue.
Why?
Our failings as a society does not make wrong right. We talk about people bringing up children in single parents relationships, and our failings do not make what is wrong right.
So why? I don't understand why it makes it wrong.
Yeah, going back to the other chap who was opposing marriage, he talked about discrimination, right? And I'll come back to you, Claire. I feel as if I'm being discriminated against because no one has bothered to ask me whether this is something that we'd like to do. It's just been rushed through. And I have a problem with Cameron and all his politician friends because I think they've totally missed the boat. There's lots of other issues that are concerning us as a general population. Why does this suddenly become a big issue?
Okay, Austin, wait a minute. I want to get this in because, Austin, I did promise you to come back. You asked Peter a question. You want to ask Peter a question?
I do very quickly to respond.
Question.
Very quickly to respond to Claire, though. By the logic of Claire's argument, we should allow 2-year or 5-year marriages on the grounds that not everybody's going to make it to the end. The point is, divorce is regarded as a failure in the law because the law is promoting long-term commitment, and that is the point about this, which is what the law said. Now, my question to Peter is this. I don't expect, by the way, that tomorrow we're going to get applications for polyamorous or polygamous unions. But when they do come in 10 years' time, as has happened in Holland and Brazil and Mexico City, on what ground of reason does he argue against people wanting to be in having their polygamous unions recognised by the law? And on what ground of reason would he refuse, for example, a move for marriage to be reduced to something temporary, like 3 or 5 years? Would he, to follow through his consistent argument, regard it as discriminatory to refuse those people the right to marry?
Peter Tatchell.
We're comparing like with like. In a heterosexual marriage, 2 adult persons are entitled to get married. We're saying the same principle of 2 adult persons should apply in the case of a gay or lesbian couple. And the reason I feel this, I'm speaking from the reality of people's lives. I've got 2 gay male friends. They were childhood sweethearts. They fell in love at the age of 16. They are still together nearly 50 years later. Their love is just as real as that of any heterosexual man and woman, and it's profoundly insulting and denigrating to their love to deny them the right to marry.
And I don't doubt for a moment their love, and I too know many same-sex couples who are deeply committed to each other and give a fine example to the rest of society about what love, stability and commitment are.
10 seconds.
He hasn't answered my question. Lots of polygamous people in polygamous unions also claim that their unions are based on deep, loving, committed relationships. Would it be discriminatory to refuse them the right to marry? Can he answer that?
Discrimination is when you compare like to like. Refusing someone housing or a job because of their race or their religion or their sexuality.
We have to have a society where everybody's got the same opportunity.
No, we don't.
Yeah,
no, we don't.
Of course
we do. Why would we strive for that? Some people are very happy.
All right. Okay.
Rich all their
in the
lives.
eyes of the law, equality in the eye. Hang on a second, Steve.
It sounds like sort of people who were advocating segregation of black people in the States. I mean, inequality is absurd.
What's your objection?
It's like you believe in the subjugation of a portion of the population because they don't deserve the same rights as everyone else. I don't understand how you're morally justifying that.
The thing is, you started off with civil partnerships, and it was like, no, we're not going to ask for anything more than that. I mean, the thing is, it's not even how is a natural thing 2 people of the same sex being together? And now we're asking the church when we don't want the church. We're not interested in the church. We're a secular society apparently now. All of a sudden, no, we want the church because all of a sudden, as same-sex people, we want that thing that you've got over there, marriage. We need that.
What are your fears?
Change it.
What are your fears?
What we want.
What are your fears? Where do you think this will lead? What are your fears about this? How will this be bad for society?
Well, how do you explain to your children when you've explained that same-sex relationships is wrong, then when society says, oh, but when your children say, oh, look, but they get married, or, and you're like, hang on, how does this undermines your whole...
What happens if you say to one of your children, if you say to your children same-sex relationships are wrong, what if one of your children's gay, Steve?
Well, they're not. And also, if they were, then you would explain to them that being gay is wrong. So,
right, I see.
You would still love them. You would still love them just the same.
Rowan, do you want to come back, and then we'll bring?
I just want to ask Steve. I just like to ask you a question. Actually, two questions. You used the word natural, and that you explained to your children that being gay is wrong. Are you aware of the fact that it's universally accepted scientifically that in the animal species, there are, amongst dogs, zebras, cats, lions, in fact, amongst so many mammal species, homosexuality is a frequent occurrence between different species of non-human beings. So I just want to, where you have animals of the same gender. But I also want to ask you, just what does it do to your life? What is the impact of your life of a gay person marrying someone that they love? Just tell me how your life is made.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Morning, 9 o'clock, your call. Gay marriage, for better or for worse. Later today, MPs will vote on proposals to allow people of the same sex to tie the knot in England and Wales. If the law is passed, will it be a great day for Britain or a bad day for marriage? The Reverend Sharon Ferguson is from the lesbian and Christian gay movement.
Love is the foundation of the purpose of marriage, and that doesn't matter whether that love is between a man and a woman, or between two men, or between two women.
Newspaper columnist Andrew Pearce is gay. He's against the idea.
Politicians are going to put church and state on this terrible collision course. Civil partnerships, to my mind, are the same as marriage. We're just arguing about a word.
Your call, what do you think? Gay marriage, for better or worse? You can text 85058. Call us 0500 909 693. You can find me on Twitter, and you can... Here we go then. Gay marriage, for better or for worse? We've got Mike Judge, a spokesman for the Coalition for Marriage. Hello, Mike.
Good morning.
Hi, and Ben Summerskill, Chief Executive of Stonewall. Hello, Ben.
Hi, Nicky.
Hi. Rowan's in London. Steve's in Exeter. Steve, good morning.
Morning.
And Rowan, good morning to you. Rowan, you go first.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Yeah, I just wanted to talk very briefly about the difference between civil partnership and marriage. We've heard that civil partnership gives people the same rights, and I want to explain why, as a gay person, marriage is so much more important to me than civil partnership. It's because of equality. It's because when you grow up and you feel alone and different to everybody else, and you harbour this terrible secret, what goes through your mind is that I won't be able to get married, like my parents, like my teachers, like the society that I live in, the fabric of that society being marriage. You don't want to be on an island on yourself called civil partnership. You want to feel that you are the same as everyone else, and that it's not so different and it's not so terrible being gay. And that's why it's not just a word, as one of your previous guests said. It's a meaning, and it's a feeling of emotional acceptance.
Steve, do you not accept that?
No. Well, why should we have equality? I don't understand. Everything's not equal in society. You've got, that I don't quite understand. Where does equality come from? Why should we have equality? I don't. Where does that come from? Whose idea is equality? The society isn't the same. We don't all have the same position in society. There's rich people, there's poor people. There's lots of different things. Who's pushing equality, and whose idea is that?
Well, we believe in justice, don't we? We believe in a of course.
Justice isn't equality.
But of course, there's rich people and poor people. But we're more difficult by that. That's all I'd like to know.
Well, my life isn't really of importance it's not a case of whether it makes my life any different or not. It's where we're going down the road. Next thing is we're going to have people marrying animals.
Oh, for goodness sake. Ben Summerskill, Mike Judge, is that an embarrassment to you, a view like that?
I don't think that those views are at all the majority views of people who have the reservations about this. And they're certainly not my views. They're not the reasons I have reservations about this. I mean, the reasons I don't think the government should be pressing ahead is it's not really asked the public. It's doing this without properly putting putting it before the public. If the government strongly believed in this, they ought to have put it in their manifesto. And indeed, all sorts of polls will give you all sorts of answers. But, when I talk to people are fairly evenly split on this. And so for those democratic reasons, I don't think it's a good idea to go ahead. But some of the reasons that your caller's just given certainly are not my reasons.
Ben Summerskill.
I must just say, Nicky, in some sense, I wish you'd let Steve go on talking all day.
Well, you can talk to him now if you like. He's still there.
I can feel public opinion swinging towards us. And the other thing I should say is it's really, really nice to hear someone called Rowan sticking up for gay people. It's a very long time since someone called Rowan has troubled to do so in such articulate terms. But the reality is